Orphan First Kill is the long-awaited prequel to the 2009 cult favourite, and despite now being in her mid-20s, Isabelle Fuhrman returns to play the lead role of Esther. The original film was a pleasant surprise, so join us today as we discuss if the follow-up reaches the same outrageous heights. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Howdy.
This is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we talk about a horror movie, we watch this, really quite that simple. And on this episode we are looking at the pretty new film, Orphan First Kill, which is a prequel to Orphan, which came out in 2009, which we just did about a month ago or so.
Classic review.
Yes, yeah. Oh, we got lots of good feedback. People love the Orphan review. So,
oh, really?
I think so. Yeah, people seem to like it. So this is. So I'd never seen Orphan when we did it last month, and it was kind of this first time for me. So I'm on the train for this one. So it's brand new. We're here to talk about it. Despite the fact that the actress, of course, is now in her 20s and not
a tad older.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know what age she was when they filmed the first movie. I'm assuming she's a little older than that than she was meant to, be portraying. But
I mean, I could be wrong, but surprisingly, I don't think she was much older. Like, I think she was maybe 14 playing 12 or something, or like 12 playing 10, something like that.
Yeah, I would expect. Yeah, because I think if you go any more than that, she'll be far too old looking.
Yeah.
So, as witnessed in this film, where she's supposed to be a little younger, and she's like 20, I don't know, 4 or whatever age she is now.
Well, like, the funny thing is like they do a lot of like pretty good, impressive tricks to make like de-age her and make her look like a kid. But like the one thing they can't change is her face. Like, she very clearly has like an adult face.
Oh yeah, you say de-age her, I would say to make her look short. I don't know if I'd say the de-age her.
Sure.
But yeah,
it's like doing like Lord of the Rings Hobbit tricks, like basically.
Pretty much, yeah. It's, obviously there's like a body double for the shots from behind and stuff like that, so they can have or be really small, or like you say, the I don't know if they're doing the optical tricks to make her look smaller, or if they're just doing something digitally to put her head on someone else's body sometimes.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I think I saw like some tweets and stuff about it where people like sharing things, and I believe like there's a lot of stuff, like obviously using a lot of body double, especially for like behind the shots from behind and that kind of thing. But then I think there's like just a lot of simple stuff, like they would just have the other actors wear like platform shoes and that kind of thing, just to make them look a lot taller.
Yeah, stand on a box. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get into it. So this is a really weird case where they wanted to do another Orphan movie, but we're going to start spoiler free for this film, as we always do. We'll start spoiler free. We'll give you warning before we get to spoilers. We will have to obviously talk about the first film a little bit, even though it's a prequel, because even the reason why it's a prequel and not a sequel is kind of a spoiler for the first movie. So spoilers for the first Orphan, and especially the twist in the first Orphan, because again, that's something that get into this movie and you didn't in the first one, so it's going to tackle it differently just inherently. So so spoilers for the first movie up front, but we'll keep spoilers for the second one until we give you the warning. So so obviously Esther pretty definitively died at the end of Orphan, so it's like, well, you want to do another Orphan movie, you kind of have to go further back, but that's really awkward because like it was a kid effectively, obviously. Yes, the twist was it was actually an older woman who has a medical condition who just looks like a child, but was supposed to look like a kid. So it would be weird even if she didn't die and we just got a sequel. It would be weird that she's not supposed to be aging, really, but she actually is. Yeah. So that would be one thing. But we're actually going further back to it was meant to be before the first movie, and we've got the same actor, and she clearly looks much older. But
and I mean, usually I'm not like a huge fan of prequels, but in the defense of this, they actually do. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but they actually do have a pretty good setup for it in the first movie, when they mention like, oh, she'd done this before to this, other family or whatever. So it's like, it's not like just like some random thing that comes out of nowhere. It's like, okay, there was set up in the first movie for, some of the stuff that we see here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm less concerned about that so much in the sense that, most prequels will take, oh, there's plans for the Death Star that could lead to a weakness, so we're going to turn a whole movie out of that. Like, I think that can still lead to feeling quite forced. Whether or not I think a prequel works, and I think most of them don't, is based on some other elements, which I'll get into when we actually give our opinion on this one in a little second. But the basic premise of this is you see kind of how Esther got to the US from Russia, and that's like a little prelude section at the start of the film that lasts about 15-20 minutes, and then you see kind of how she integrated with this first victim, this first family, if you will, and it's the story of that. I will say that there are actually some interesting swerves which I did not see coming. The first Orphan, I knew the twist going in because it was such a famous twist, basically. This one actually does do a good job of doing something else to make it sure it's because I was very worried, and I think for a bit I was worried it was going to feel like a repeat of the same movie, like some sequels and prequels feel like, which is, oh, she's with this family, she's going to do the same sort of shit. But there are some things to turn it on its head and to make it feel fresh, which I think is the more important thing to me, rather than just, oh, they were set up for a prequel in the original movie kind of thing. And I think honestly the only reason why this is a prequel, I genuinely believe, is because they have to set it before because of how the first movie ended. I think it would just be a sequel if it wasn't for that, but
I agree.
Julia Stiles is the mother of the family, Trisha, that she ends up with. Rossif Sutherland, who I've never heard of, plays the father. He's Alan, and then there's a teenage brother named Gunnar who is ultimately there. There's also a detective character who is played by Hiro Kanagawa, who I have seen play a detective in several movies at this point because he just shows up and plays a detective every time. I'm sure I've seen him in a bunch, but the last one I remember for sure, because it wasn't that long ago I watched him, was one of the 50 Shades movies. He's a detective in one of those, of all things. So...
someone's too horny. I better investigate this.
There's a home intruder, okay?
Oh, okay.
Hell, but
it's not part of their like role play or whatever.
No, but although there is a relevant joke though. Basically, when like a bodyguard comes in and like takes down the intruder, and they say, "I've got nothing to tie his hands with," the main character goes, "Oh, we've got something."
Okay, that's not bad.
It's one of the few actually intentional good jokes in that series was that moment. But you'd be surprised by the end of that third movie there's been like a hostage situation and everything like that trilogy just shoehorns in all sorts of wacky plot by the end.
I didn't even realize there was 3 of them.
Those 3. Wow. Trust me, I remember every painful minute. I recall. So yes, that's the basic setup of this movie, without getting into spoiler territory, where probably the things that are more interesting to talk about are the spoilers, so we'll save that for a bit later. But without further ado, I'll ask Tim the question. Tim, what did you think of Orphan First Kill?
So I was actually pretty excited about this going in, and
I wonder why. What possible detail about the film could you be excited for, Tim?
So obviously a lot of people are probably aware that this is directed by William Brent Bell, my boy, who did The Boy. So now, to be fair, I can be critical though, because I haven't liked every movie he's done. I quite like The Boy. The sequel has some good stuff, but it's not not as good as the first one. And then I mean, let's face it, most of the other movies he's done has been crap. So
I don't even think I can name any other. What else has he done?
Jeez,
I'll get the list up. You're struggling. I'll get the list up.
So I know he did that gamer game.
He did The Devil Inside. I didn't see that, but that I heard lots of bad things about that.
Yeah, that one is extremely bad, and I could be wrong, but I want to say that's is that the movie that with the website
go here, you actually get the ending. I think that's that one.
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah, so that one was super bad. That video game one I haven't seen, but I've heard it's really bad. Yeah.
I only noticed the video game one because the poster has a game controller covered in blood.
Honestly, we should watch that on for the show one day, because I'm sure it'll be
I'm sure
entertaining. Oh, let's have a video game vote. There's probably like enough to do like 3 video game themes.
Yeah, that Silent Hill.
Have we not done the Silent Hill movies?
We haven't, believe it or not.
Oh,
and
wow.
One day we're going to have to.
That's kind of a video game movie, I think.
Oh, sure, yeah. One day we're going to have to do the entire Resident Evil franchise, and I'm not happy about it. Like, obviously we did the new one, but I mean the the dreaded Alice saga.
Yeah, definitely not a day I will be looking forward to. There's what, like 13 of those? How many are there?
It feels like it. It was only 6, but it feels like it.
So anyway, yeah. So William Brent Bell directed this. So yeah, not a fan of everything he's done, but I didn't quite like The Boy, so I was hoping he could work his magic. And then also, I really liked the first Orphan movie. Did it need a sequel? Absolutely not. But hey, here we go. And so I actually ended up watching this twice, because I watched it when it first came out, and then I watched it today again for the podcast. And I think I'm happy to say that I actually really, really like this movie. It's not perfect. I have some nitpicks for sure, but I think it is so fun. It's total camp. Like, if you're going in, because the first Orphan movie, I'd say, is like just pretty good as like just a movie. Whereas this, if you're trying to engage it on that level, you might not have fun with it. But if you're going in with like wanting a very cheesy, very campy movie, I think this is really delivers on that front. I mean, Julia Stiles is just like such a good choice for like this like stuck up waspy, like I want to say they're in Connecticut. Like Connecticut rich mom trying to hold it together.
I mean, I don't remember the location, but yeah, they're a very well-off family. Yeah,
if it's not Connecticut, it's like some like hoity-toity like New England rich area.
I mean, the teenage son, because participates in fencing competitions. That tells you what you need to know about their social status.
Yeah, but then like and even like the beginning has this like almost like Arkham Asylum-esque like opening where I'm like damn, like Esther's like the Joker in this, like she's like a form to be reckoned with. But yeah, I think it's it's very fun and goofy and over the top. There's some like legitimate moments where I laughed, and I do think like we were saying, like it does kind of amuse me that she's supposed to look like a little kid, but her face still looks like a 20-something like grown-ass woman,
which I think would be fine if like see if the first movie was made this way and this was just what it established, that'd be fine. I think what makes it weird is that she was actually a kid in the first one,
for sure. Yeah,
and it sticks out. That said, though, I will say this: I understand why they said screw it, let's just pretend, because it's better if we have the actress back, because she's actually quite good at playing this role. So let's just go with it. So what, I'll it's fine, whatever. Yeah,
and then the kind of the last quick thing I'll say about it, and this will kind of go in a nitpick I had, which is you mentioned how there's like a twist that happens maybe about it's about halfway ish through the movie.
There's a swerve halfway through for sure. Yeah.
I absolutely love what they did with that. I think it brings such a fun dynamic to the movie, and especially like something that actually makes it, I think like that makes it worth doing this movie instead of, because otherwise it would just be like you were saying before, it would basically just be, repeating the first movie, which is like, hey, what's the point? But I think that brings such a fun dynamic, and really like my big critique would be, I wish we could have gotten to that sooner and watched it played out a little more. Because I think it's such a fun idea. I would have really liked to have seen more of that instead of like, once that kind of happens, and it's like the rest of the movie's fun, but it's like, boom, 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 like we're, everything's kind of going on the rails, and, we're chugging along to the ending. But I could have easily, maybe cut out some stuff in the beginning or something and gotten to that quicker and really played around with it a little bit more. But yeah, other than that, I was pretty pleased with this movie. I thought it was a lot of fun.
I think, it's the way I describe this film is that the first half is not bad. It's perfectly fine. Has a couple of okay moments. but it doesn't necessarily have anything in it that makes it feel like it's worthwhile doing or special or anything. You know, I was kind of I kind of feel like it was going through the motions almost, and then that halfway point hits. And I don't think I have had such a sick smile appear across my face as I realised what it was doing, because I was like, oh, this movie's actually got a good idea. This actually has something, a spark to it. It just kind of had to hide it for a bit of time, because, you know, and I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? I think I may actually be into what this is doing now. But before, I wasn't miserable before. It was fine, but I wasn't, you know, like, it didn't have that. You know, in the first movie, there was lots of laugh out loud moments. You know, when like Vera Farmiga's saying like, you know, when a mummy and daddy love each other, and she's like, yeah, I know, they screw, you know, but with an F-bomb, like that made me cackle, and there wasn't really anything like that felt like that in the first half to me. You know, there was almost some comically kind of over the top stuff that, you know, especially in the asylum at the start, the way. Like she's able to like Esther like legitimately Michael Myers out of scenes multiple times in this movie, and one of them is so quick where she's literally just went around the corner and then she's disappeared, that I went, wait a minute, how did she do that? That was like straight up teleportation. Like, you know, there's stupid shit like that right from the start of the movie, and I can get into the campiness of it, but like there was nothing special or inspired about it, and then this swerve happens halfway through. And all of a sudden, I am so invested in the dynamics that are at play and what it's doing, and it justifies itself existing, because all of a sudden, it's playing with the formula of what the first movie was and doing different things with it, and it actually gave me, you know, when I said my favorite moment when I was watching the first movie early on, that it sort of went, oh, I think I like this, was the wee F moment, right, or the F moment. When she's talking to Vera Farmiga, there is an equivalent to that in this movie that happens in the second half that I love just as much, because it was such a good play on it. So I'll talk about that when we can talk about spoilers. But if I have a critique other than just, you know, you have to sort of go through the motions in the first half to get to the good stuff, it would probably be that, you know, I don't know if there's like as fun kills perhaps as the first one. Or,
that's fair.
I mean, the first one also had the problem is there wasn't that many, because there could only be so many. I think this one similarly, like, I think when you get to the last like 10 minutes, I think maybe one or two of the more interesting kills that could have happened end up being quite quick and not super exciting on their own terms.
Yeah, it's the ending itself, I think, felt a little rushed. I think especially the second time watching it, because like I knew like where we're going. I think I would have liked maybe a little more, maybe some interesting or more fun deaths.
Yeah, not that some of the ones that are there aren't all right, and there's not some fun to be had, but definitely most of the fun comes from the dynamics between Esther and the other characters, which
exactly,
you know, we'll delve into. So
well, I'll rip my pants and call me shorts. It sounds like you're positive on this movie.
Shockingly, Orphan the franchise is 2 for 2 and being surprisingly good. And this is easily William Brent Bell's best movie that I've seen. Like I'll throw that out there right now.
We'll give the man the credit where it is due. I'm curious. I wonder if we go back and see which movies, which of his other movies he's written and which ones he's just directed. Because I don't think he actually wrote this one. It was.
No, I'm looking now. Yeah, it's a story by David Leslie Jordan McGoldrick. That is a long name, dude. And Alex Mace, and then screenplay by David Coggenhall. So, or sorry, Coggeshall. Sorry, not Coggenhall. Coggeshall.
So, I mean, I don't know. Like maybe he is like a decent director. Maybe he just needs the right script or to work with the right people or something. Because I actually did think there were some like pretty shots in this. Like, you know, I think like in the opening you have some nice like overhead shots of like you know, going through the snow, and like it's over the top and exaggerated, but I did like, you know, the way like the asylum looked, especially when, you know, like the alarms are going off and it's like, you know, dark and there's this flashing red. Like it just gives it this kind of like ambiance that you know, I thought was like, oh, this is like pretty cool. Like, you know, it has a bit more style than I feel like, you know, you might see in these movies sometimes.
I'm not ready to. I don't know if I'm ready to like jump. I would say it's at least competent direction.
Sure.
It sounds like a backhanded compliment, but like I did not like how The Boy was directed, from what I remember. So I'm not ready to jump in and say he's a good visual director necessarily, but I certainly didn't think this felt choppy or anything like that. So at the very least, it wasn't committing sins that were annoying me, at least.
Yeah, well, maybe The Boy will be one of the movies we rewatch soon.
I was going to say we don't rewatch things on the show, but we have redone a few early reviews because we did, we weren't that good in the first 50 to 100 episodes, so some of the bigger movies
but
some of the bigger movies we did back then we've went back and redone.
The Boy's a pretty big movie.
There's a few other bigger movies from that time period that I think we should redo before we put The Boy on the schedule, quite frankly. Or before I'm willing to rewatch the damn thing. I'll say that for a start. Anyway, so yes, as far as like what else can we talk about spoiler free? Really, I the performance. I mean, I do think the actress here, Isabelle Fuhrman, Fuhrman, maybe. She obviously is good in this role. I don't know if she's done much acting outside of this role. Probably. I
think she has. If you look at her like IMDb list, I think there's it's a pretty decent list. She was in the Hunger Games. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I mean, she definitely seems like someone that's working, but maybe not stuff that we specifically.
Escape Room 2? I'm sure I saw that.
Oh, you know what? I think she was in it, but it might depend on what version.
I don't think she was in the version I watched then.
Yeah.
Because if it's the scenes that it depends on which version you watch, it means that's probably the scenes where she's with the guy who made the maze, I assume. Yeah,
like is she the guy's like daughter or something? Maybe
I assume so. I never saw that cut, so I never saw those scenes.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think that's what it was.
Wild.
But so one thing I actually do like about her is that it seems like she really does like what do you call it? Like she seems to kind of like take some pride in this character. Like just when the movie's coming out, you see like publicity stuff, and then you might see some like I see her talking about stuff on Twitter and stuff, and it seems like like she seems like she's getting into it, and like like they'll post like behind the scenes stuff when she's like having fun on set and like being like, oh, like thanking the fans and stuff. Like it's like seems like it's not just someone like, oh sure, yeah, I'll come back for. I mean, I'm sure it is mostly a paycheck thing, but it's not like someone that she's like, oh, I'm so embarrassed that I had to do this character again or whatever. Like she seems to kind of be wallowing in it, which
she's realizing
cool.
She can Freddy Krueger this. This is her Freddy Krueger. So she's got to appreciate it, I think. And
yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I did see like an article when it came out that WBB said that that they were like thinking about.
It took me. I was like, Warner Brothers, what? And I was like, the director. William Brent. Okay.
Yeah, but I think he has said that they've talked about possible ideas for for a third one if they want to explore that. So
I think at this point you have to find a way to just retcon the ending of the first movie just so you can
go you can't like continuously go backwards like oh, now we'll find out how she got in the insane asylum in the beginning. But
yeah, she's meant to be like 6 at this point. Her face is getting older. Yeah, I think what you do is like somehow she survived and was in a coma for a decade, and she wakes up. Do something like that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, like it, especially if the series is going to continue to kind of go down like this campy road. That's fine.
Whatever. Yeah. If we can find a new way to do it, like a new dynamic that she can have with other characters, because we'll talk about what makes this one different to the first soon, and it is very different to the first because of the new dynamics they introduce.
Yeah, so like I like that each movie has kind of had a very like specific hook to it. So I mean, I'd be down for more movies, but it is kind of tough because you've set yourself up now with having this having it in this movie. So you could just do like a straight up whatever, boilerplate slasher kind of ish movie or whatever, but it wouldn't be as fun.
Maybe do one that's more teen focused where she like instead of infiltrating a family just actually decides to go to high school or something.
Yeah.
And like tries to find a boy to love her there. I don't know.
Sure.
Even though she clearly has a taste for, middle-aged men. That's been established at this point, but all right, well, I think with that said, I think we'll probably just give the spoiler warning so we can delve into it properly. So full spoilers for Orphan First Kill. You have been warned. We'll get into the maybe we should just start with the big thing, the big revelation, and sort of talk about the other stuff as we want to. So the big reveal in this movie, halfway through, which is sort of encountered upon because to keep her identity sort of intact, Esther's going to go and murder this detective who's been kind of looking into her. Clearly he's suspicious. He doesn't quite believe that this is the real Esther, because Esther is this real girl that went missing from this family, and she's assuming her identity because it's been a few years since she went missing, and she like, oh, I look close enough to her that I can play off that I'm this missing daughter and seek asylum elsewhere through that. But she goes to this detective's apartment and stabs him repeatedly. He's not quite dead. And the twist is that Julia Stiles' character Trisha has realized she's going here because she's been looking through a little creepy book with all her details in it, and shoots the detective in front of Esther. And you're going like, wait, what's going on here? What's happening? And the twist is that the real Esther didn't really go missing. That was the story, but actually her older brother accidentally killed her, and Julia Stiles helped cover it up. So they've known the whole time that this isn't really Esther because they killed Esther.
Yeah.
But the dad doesn't know any of this shit, so they have to kind of play it up and keep up the appearances.
Especially because like the dad is so like into her and so happy that it's just like totally like upended this family that was, you gotta imagine like Julia Stiles and the son are clearly sociopaths, but so yeah, I'm sure that they were doing fine, but like the dad, who's kind of like the heart and soul of the family, was just so crushed that like they're willing to accept this weird stranger because of
I think what gets to me is that Julia Stiles' character doesn't feel that she needs to be a sociopath. Like it's one thing like, oh, my teenage son accidentally killed his little sister and I want to cover this up because I don't want him to go to prison, and I want to bury this so that no one ever knows what he did. But she is straight up willing to just murder people left and right in this. And later on, when it's like, okay, Esther's too much of a problem now, we're going to have to just kill her. Like that's not like a big choice for her. She's just like, yeah, okay, we need to kill her son. It's time to kill her. So
it's like there's not even a discussion about it. Like, but well, how will this affect Dad? It's like, no, this is just way too inconvenient for me now. Like, we just gotta go.
Yeah, because at first she's like holding a gun to her and saying, "You're going to keep this charade up because it makes my husband happy." So. That's what I'm saying. Like, what we were saying before is that it completely changes the dynamic where now everyone but one character knows who she really is and is in on it and wants to, and is playing this like passive aggressive game of like, playing games with each other where maybe they'll try and kill her, maybe she'll try and kill them. There's a sort of like rivalry developing between them. Whilst the dad's oblivious to all, it completely changes the dynamic that was in the first movie and makes it feel fresh and different. So, and
also it makes Esther like the hero. Like, she's the one you're kind of rooting for now.
Bizarrely, it kind of does in a weird way. Even though there's still some creepy, like, she's falling for the dad. She clearly has an attraction to him, which leads to what I was saying earlier. There is a counterpoint. So it's I know they screw. I'm clearing up the language a bit there, but the counterpoint to that in this is not like a similar moment. It's a reverse of it, where Julia Stiles notices and is telling that Esther is like wanting her husband. So she comes and like says and tells her off and makes it very clear that like that's not an option. Like, you'll never go before because she's a child. And then she rubs it in. She actually rubs it in. I'm going to go upstairs and F my husband. Like, you're rubbing it in her face. You're flaunting it. Like, this is and what's so great is that the first movie had these things where Vera Farmiga and the husband were, they were having sex, they were being loving, and Esther was spying on them and feeling jealous. Like, that was a big plot point of the first movie. So to have the mother in this movie come out and be like, yeah, bitch, he's mine. Come and get him if you can. I'm going to go screw his brains out right now, and there's nothing you can do about it, you little bitch. Like, that is such a fun, inventive, like, topsy-turvy, like, to flip it around. Like, all of a sudden, you're taking what made the first film interesting, and you're playing with it and doing different things with it to completely shake up what the flow of the movie is. Honestly, this twist that two of the family members knew the whole time she couldn't be who she was claiming to be, and that they've got a dark secret as well that makes them all nefarious, horrible people, is quite exciting. If anything, we should feel sympathetic for the dad, who's the one innocent character in the whole movie,
for sure,
and doesn't deserve any of this shit. But hey, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a good reveal, and like, man, like, especially in this day and age where I feel like they always show the best parts in the trailers, and you know, there's always like these, you know, rumors and cast confirmations like well before these big movies come out. It feels so good to watch something and genuinely be surprised by it. So it was just such a moment of joy. And what's also great about it is it's super funny when you or at least I might have had my biggest like laugh in the movie was so when you get this reveal and, you know, Julia Stiles you know, shoots the detective, like Esther just looks at her and she goes, "Mommy," like she's like like she has this like high pitched like shock, but like she's still calling her mommy, which is like just so funny.
Yeah, so let's go back and work through it there. I felt it was important to start off with the twist because I think it reshapes how you think about a lot of the other things as you're going.
And it was interesting because I did see it twice, so watching it a second time, you know, knowing everything, it is like interesting to
the body language of the brother when he first meets her and things like that.
Exactly, yeah, because when you're like when I was first watching the movie, I kind of thought like, okay, maybe are they like a little suspicious of her or something, and now you're watching it, there's like all this context of like, oh, like, well, yeah, they are suspicious, but it's because they know for sure that she's not her. I
do actually acknowledge that the first half might be more interesting when you know where it's going now, because you're watching how they're treating her versus him and versus the dad, and you know, this idea that the detective clearly suspected foul play with the daughter before, and that's why he's like so suspicious now of like this returning daughter. So that's why he's looking into it. So it's very, very interesting. And also, like, you know, they are really hateable. You know, at one point when Gunnar, the brother, is like sort of fighting or arguing with Esther, and you know, she's like, "Oh, you know, if you like reveal who I am, I'll take you down too for killing your sister." And he's like, well, that's the word of a crazy like foreigner who, you know, snuck into the country. And I'm an important person. We're an important family. Don't you know who I like? You know, he really plays on the I'm the rich white boy kind of attitude. That I'm important. I can get away with anything. You know, that's kind of so they're very unlikable because of that. Yeah,
he's like I don't know what the male version of a Karen would be, but that's like kind of how he comes off, like, you know, very entitled, very self-important. Like, I think Julia Stiles even has like a line at some point where she's like, our family came here through like on the Mayflower, like who gives a shit. Like, yeah, they're just so like, you know, upper class waspy characters that they're very like very easy to hate. And you know, Julia Stiles I think especially does a really, really good job of like really playing into that just like, oh, you just love to hate her, you know, kind of character. But yeah, no, that was good stuff.
And it's kind of funny from a perspective of being a horror movie where obviously it still is horror to an extent, but once it's more about like two like factions of killers sort of squaring off instead of like, oh no, there's a creepy kid who might kill everyone, it kind of changes the tone a little bit to more of a horror comedy, I would say.
Oh sure. Yeah.
But you know, that's fine. It's interesting how it changes things up because of that. But I'm thankful it did, because it made it feel like a fresh new take. So anyway, the movie starts in, you know, the asylum. It's this doctor lady who's like coming in for the first time, and we meet the patients. I do love that the alarm goes off, and it's like, oh, our, you know, most dangerous patient. I can't remember what her name was before Esther, because that's obviously not our original name. Was it? I would say
Lena or something.
Something like that. Yeah. But they put the new doctor lady in like the craft room, said like, stay here, we're going to lock the door and we'll come back and get you once we've found her. and like immediately when she turns round, Esther's just sitting there at the table drawing like a little creepy kid, and I'm like, did you not think to check the room you were putting this new woman in? Like, you didn't even glance around to see if anyone else was there before you locked her in with the dangerous mental patient? No? Okay.
And it's like, so, and obviously if you're watching the movie, you know who it's going to be, and so like, you know what's coming, but I love that, yeah, the doctor has no idea what it is, because she thinks it's like a little kid or something. She's like, oh, do your parents work here? And you just see her like thinking about like, why would my parents work here? Like, what does that mean? Like, and I just thought it was a really fun scene. Like, again, it's very over the top. Like, you know, the alarms are sounding and the lights are flashing on and off. But like, I thought it that gave it kind of a cool like look and feel to it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things about the height, you know, them playing with the height to make her look shorter, is I think it's slightly inconsistent in the sense that I didn't even notice them doing it until, you know, there was like a wide shot and I was like, oh shit, they're actually trying to show that she's like half the height of her, when I didn't get that perspective at all when she was sitting down. And I know that she's sitting down, but I feel like you still, you know, you can still tell that someone's a kid size versus an adult size in most shots. Whereas here it feels a little like, oh, we don't have to do anything special in this shot, so we won't bother, versus oh, this shot where it's clearly like an effect to make her look really short. So it's very inconsistent in that sense. But obviously the guards and that come back in and they lock her up, and it's just maybe a creepy moment to like, you know, I think I do enjoy this opening 15-20 minute chunk. I don't know if you need it. Like, you probably could just start the movie with her, you know, assuming the identity of like someone to get out of the country, and that'd be it. I
like it. I like it as well. But like, if we needed to sacrifice it to get to like the really good stuff in the movie once the reveal happens, like if you could have had lose it and get more of that.
You could have had 20 more minutes of the stuff after the reveal instead of this, and keep it at an hour 40, which to be fair is shorter than the first, because the first movie was like 2 hours. Like, I remember commenting on that. So yeah, I would have maybe swapped it for that, but it was a fun enough little section for what it was. You have kind of this creepy part where she basically makes this big escape and it ultimately kills the new doctor lady by like following her home or hiding in her car and then killing her at her house, and then she uses her, you know, stuff to set up her ruse to, you know, get out of the country. But there's a really creepy, the way she makes her escape though is she, like, the guard comes and brings her food, or no, brings her her package. She gets like her ribbons for her wrists and her neck, and basically this guard is a perv who's got a crush on her, and yes, he knows that it's a 30-year-old, but it doesn't change the fact that he's attracted to someone who looks like a child. So it's really
strange.
It's really creepy. And she's like, I want to thank you for doing this for me, can you come in? And like he comes in wanting, I don't want to say it, but he stands there and she gets on a box and she starts like stroking his head, and she ultimately bashes his head against the wall and kills him. But there's a moment here where he's like, he's into it. He's enjoying himself. He's clearly, his, you know, pervy side is coming out, and he's in. So I felt uncomfortable with this, which you're supposed to. Don't get me wrong.
It's hard to feel bad for him.
It is. And it's, I mean, at least in the context of this movie, we know it's actually an adult actress who's doing it. Part of the things that made it so uncomfortable when she was trying to do stuff in the first movie is like, you're actually like 11. Like, this is creepy as shit.
I still really hope like some of those scenes they filmed in the first one that like they use like body doubles or something, because that was like really awkward if you're making a very young person do that stuff.
I can't remember the shots. I don't know if it was possible, but maybe it was a close up of the hand touching the leg. Maybe it was right. They had like an actress who was older just do the to the hand.
Hopefully.
I would make me feel more comfortable anyway. But here it was just kind of this weird thing. But she escapes, and she ultimately beats the doctor lady with a crowbar, I think it is, or maybe it's like a tire iron.
I wasn't quite sure what it is, but something along those lines.
Gets blood all over her face, and the ruse commences, and we're introduced to the family who are at the older brother's fencing competition, and they get the news that maybe they found their daughter. The detective shows up.
Yeah, I thought it was actually really interesting. They did a needle drop when they cut to him fencing from an Interpol song, and I was just kind of like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I don't really hear like, I don't know. I feel like I don't hear this type of music that much in like horror movies, but I thought it was kind of cool.
I don't know the song actually. I didn't recognize it. It didn't stick out to me, but
I think if if you like Interpol, people would probably recognize it.
oh sure. I'm not familiar with them, but I'm glad you're hip and down with the kids' music because you caught this and I didn't.
Yeah, like a 20, 30-year-old band.
So, yeah. But yeah, so Julia Stiles comes and gets her. Obviously, it's quite awkward when she meets her. And there's a moment because they're flying back in a plane. And at first I didn't realize how rich they were, and I thought maybe they were given like a private plane because this was like a special, like, oh, we're going to give you a plane to go pick up your daughter kind of thing. Obviously, once I saw how rich they were, though, I was like, oh, maybe they're just rich enough to afford a private plane. But there's a whole thing where Esther like asks, she's showing her photos of like, here's your family, and here's your brother and your father. And obviously in hindsight, I'm thinking, oh, this is like so she'll recognize them all, so that she'll act appropriately when she sees them. But she shows her the grandmother, and she's like, oh, I can't wait to meet her. And it's like, no, Esther, she died, remember?
Yeah.
Which pisses her off because she grabs like one of the little bottles of vodka and like goes to the bathroom in the plane and starts hitting her head on the wall. Like, you stupid bitch! How could you say that? You're so stupid, Esther. Get it together. And slaps herself.
What's really funny is like there's a lot of like little things like this, and like people always seem to be like shocked when like she doesn't remember something, like especially like the one that I think is like they try to treat it like a big deal, but honestly like sounds very stupid to me, is like when she mistakes the parrot or whatever in the therapist's office, and when they're like that's so strange, like she thought it was this bird, but it was actually a different bird when I saw her last. But it's like, and
it's worth mentioning as well here that this was a therapist that she'd already seen before she was, the original Esther, saw before she was killed. So this isn't even just like a therapist because, oh, you're back from this traumatic experience of being kidnapped for 4 years. It's someone that you've seen before.
Yeah, but the thing that's like wild to me is like when they are getting freaked out about this stuff. It's like, yeah, but like she went through an incredibly horrific like experience. Like, she was very young when she was kidnapped, and she's gone through so much stuff. Like, maybe give her a little break that she doesn't remember the parrot, like, oh yeah, what breed it was.
I think that's what's interesting is like obviously there'd be questions of like, okay, who kidnapped you, what were you doing for these last 4 years, and they kind of like say to a point, like we have to give her space and time to talk about it. But I do appreciate that once the twist is revealed, once we know, or once it's revealed that the mother and the brother knew that she wasn't really her anyway, it does all of a sudden make a lot more sense that she wasn't pushing for answers in the same way.
Right, yeah.
Because the therapist is like, something feels off about this, and the detective's like, something feels off about this, like, and the dad arguably is just so emotionally invested that he's like willing to accept the lie, even if deep down he should be like getting red flags. But
yeah, no. Yeah, so have you ever heard of this documentary called The Imposter? Because when you're watching a lot of this, there's a lot of like instances where it does seem like, okay, how could you fall for that? But what's funny is there's a documentary that I just watched the other day called The Imposter, which is basically the same story as this movie. So it's like, I guess his family did fall for that. Like, I don't know. I guess it could happen.
I guess. I've not seen the documentary, but I think I heard about it existing.
I think it's really interesting to watch like after watching this movie, because it feels like way too much of a coincidence, some of the stuff that happens in this, that like that they did, that the person that wrote it or whatever didn't wasn't at least a little bit inspired by it. Like for example, like one of the things that happens in the documentary is like the like person that goes missing, the sister, like flies over to I think it's Spain to pick him up, and then like she brings all these photographs to show him, and she like points him out like, oh, like remember, this is like your uncle blah blah blah, and this is your dad, and this is your blah blah, and then like he uses that information like when they're like doing like a like a test or whatever to get the person like a visa to leave the country to verify that he is part of that family. But like he like literally was using like the pictures and stuff that they were saying, which it felt very reminiscent of that scene that you were just talking about, like where Julia Stiles is showing them or her Esther all like the pictures and going like, this is blah 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 blah, remember?
I think it's fine for them to take influence from that, even if the original even if the original movie is inspired. Like it's fine if you it's because it's never claiming to actually be based on anything, but that's okay,
right? No, I mean it obviously they end up veering going in different directions, but it's just funny how like weirdly similar or just the fact that like this did actually happen in real life.
I think for me what's interesting about this therapist stuff is that the idea that the therapist isn't convinced that this is all in the up and up and that she thinks something's wrong, and she proclaims that to the mother, to Trisha, is that after the twist happens, Trisha is like, hey, we have to convince the therapist that you're really Esther because she thinks something's fishy, and we have to this idea that they have to team up to help like the lie be maintained, like the idea that she's actually in cahoots with her and she's like taught her about all these memories so she can help like convince the therapist, that's the sort of thing that I would have liked more of before they broke down into a rivalry, is the idea that they're actually working together to maintain this lie that she is the daughter, that she is Esther. I think that's fascinating, and I would have liked a bit more of that stuff before it broke down into, oh, we're going to try and kill each other and be butting heads constantly.
Oh, for sure. No, I think that would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So that was like one of the that was like the first time they went to therapy, I was just kind of like, oh, this is just doing similar stuff to the first movie where it's setting up this like sort of maybe some people are suspecting something's not quite right, but honestly, again, it became much more interesting once the twist happened, and then in that context, it was like, oh, okay, this is why you set up this therapy stuff. This is super interesting. But yeah, so from there, we get scenes with the father. It does tie into some stuff in the first movie where the father here is a painter, and he specifically does this sort of gimmick painting where with a black light, he has like a second layer to the painting, which is relevant to the first movie because remember she had all those hidden messages that she painted on the wall. Yeah. So this was kind of like explaining that a little bit, I guess.
Like, so this to me, this kind of feels like that prequel-y stuff that you're kind of talking about in the beginning where like, we don't really need this explain, like it's fine or whatever in the movie, it's I guess I wouldn't say I hated it, but this is that kind of prequel stuff that I don't really like as much, where it's like it's not like we had a big question in the first movie like where would she have learned this technique, like it's whatever.
I think I've definitely seen more egregious like forms of this. Sure. That didn't feel too bad because it wasn't like there was a bunch of stuff that was all like, oh, we have to explain this and this.
Right. Yeah.
This was kind of the only real thing that felt like that, and it was it was fairly all right because it's like, okay, he's a painter, that's fine. You're going with that. Obviously he's like happy to have his daughter back. He's happy that she's bonding with him over painting because the real Esther didn't actually draw or paint anything, whereas she's really into it. And that's like, okay, that's neat. And maybe that's like why this is the first person, because it sets up early in the movie that Esther, up until this point, she would typically just infiltrate a family, steal from them, and run away. Although there was one example that got her in the asylum, which is she decided to kill the family. This seems to be the first time she actually falls for the patriarch of the family, because she is actually going to escape. There's about a third into the movie after she's stolen a bunch of jewelry and stuff, and she's clearly hating being with the brother. She's just going to run away. She's like packed her bag, she's taken all this rich stuff, and she's just going to bolt it. But then when she's running away, she looks in the window and sees the dad painting and is like, ah, I kind of like him. So she decides to come back and sort of like continue the charade of being the daughter. So this is her deviating from her plan, as it were. This is the first time she tries to sort of stay in a at-length capacity because she thinks she can pull it off. And maybe that's her admitting, maybe the reason why she always did leave before is she kind of admits to herself that, like, she can't lie like this forever. Eventually someone's going to find out something that leads to the truth. So I guess there's some realism there in that sense from her. So yeah, that's fair. But yeah, she butts heads with the brother when the brother's having like a little party, tells him to go F himself, which is probably the first time in the movie I got like a little chuckle out of like, okay, this feels like sort of Esther antics, kind of stuff.
That's another thing too, where like I think I would have liked to have seen maybe more of their rivalry. Again, like, you know, the brother does I think like a pretty good job of being just like, yeah, that very douchey like kind of character.
And notably it's different because the first movie it was like there was two other kids and the brother didn't like her because he was jealous of her attention, and the sister was like scared of her. I like that this was a very different dynamic. Again, this was a teenage brother who just thought she was weird, and then once you realized that he is also killed his previous sister, he's actually like just a complete rival for her instead of being, you know, like what they did with the kids in the first movie was really smart to have them be scared of her, because that was like a really, that was the horror movie element more than anything of the movie, was like their perspective. Here it's very different, and again I appreciate that, so yeah, that's good.
Also it's like kind of, I don't know, weird and I don't know, maybe kind of creepy that like you never really find out exactly what happened to the original Esther. Like Julia Stiles just at one point says like, yeah, he always did play too rough with her, and it's kind of like, oh, like what did he do? like I like you probably don't want to know, but yeah, definitely it kind of makes me like hate him more versus that like, you know, it makes it kind of sound like, you know, like, oh yeah, it wasn't like a simple accident. It's like, yeah.
And he's not very remorseful about it, is he?
No, he seems like, you know, totally okay with it.
Yeah, it's not
like I think at one point he is kind of just like, can't we just kill her too? Like,
yeah, that's his attitude. It's because it's not like when he's conflicted emotionally that he's seeing this, what's kind of like his dead sister come back. You know, it never feels like he's going through this emotional thing. It just feels like he's annoyed that he's having to deal with this immediately. So I think the dynamics there are really good, especially since that they're so different from the first movie again. But yeah, so, you know, obviously those scenes where the detective comes over when they're eating and is asking questions, and Esther's getting all kind of antsy about it, and then decides to sort of do some research on him, and that leads to the twist. And from there, like, you have all these like moments that play out of her, like, you know, playing into the whole father thing. I talked about Julia Stiles is getting jealous and being like, he's my husband, bitch, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it
becomes like a kind of like a cartoon, like cat and mouse, like kind of game between them, which is a lot of fun.
Because she gets upset because she's trying to talk in front of at the dinner table, and because of the way the conversation's going, Esther gets annoyed at the other two in front of the dad and decides she wants to be excused, and she takes her dinner with her, and she doesn't eat it. And then later on, like the rat that she's got, like that's like living in the vent that she's like a friend with. That's a weird sentence, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like he's like dead from the macaroni and cheese, and it's like, like they were trying to either kill her, or that would probably look too suspicious. So maybe just put her to sleep, but it was enough to kill the rat. I think what I like about that is that one of the reasons why they don't want to just get rid of her is because it would be so suspicious if Esther disappears again, because the original Esther disappeared, so it'd be weird if you disappeared too. It would also probably completely destroy the husband. Obviously, it doesn't take too long before like, this is not worth the effort. She's too dangerous to have around.
Yeah. Once like they're starting to become like mildly inconvenienced, it's like, all right, let's just get rid of her.
Well, you can't trust her. She's too devious. She's going to try and plot their death at some point. And I
feel like though, like if they were more like acting like normal accepting people, like I don't know, I had the feeling at first like Esther might go along with it. I mean, if she keeps developing feelings for the father, you know, that's one thing, but like I feel like, you know, like they kind of, you know, throw the first stone, I guess, like with the whole macaroni thing, and like then it's like game on. But I don't know. Yeah. Obviously, she's suspicious before that, but when she sees that, it's like, oh, I can't. This is not sustainable. Like we have to fight back. And she has this moment where the dad's going off to like a show somewhere to show his art off, and like they're at the train station saying goodbye, and she has this moment because she's holding like a poster tube with her art in it, and
where like both the mother and son are standing next to the train. The train's coming in, and you get what she's going to do. She's going to go up and use the poster tube as like a sort of battering ram and sort of push both of them at the same time out of the tracks. And it just so happens a stranger bumps into her and she's about to do it, and like Julia Stiles is like clearly knows what she was about to do. Like she can tell that that's what the plan was. So they say goodbye to the dad. And what's so funny about the dynamics of this scene to me is that as she's saying, "Oh, please take me with you, Daddy," and the dad's like, "No, I have to leave you with your mother, but I'll be back. Wish me luck." Is that there is kind of this like, yeah, she knows that they're going to try and kill her if he's gone. Yeah. Like him being around keeps her safe to some extent, and like this is going to be the Wild West if he's not there. So immediately, as soon as he leaves, like Julia Stiles like, "Oh, you tried to kill me, you little bitch. Oh, you think you can get away with that?" And like she runs off and she actually steals their car and drives off.
I think like she literally tells him like, "You're dead," which is like you probably shouldn't say that.
Well, once
she maces what's his face?
Yeah, she maces the brother and she runs off and steals their car. But as soon as like she's gone, like she turns to the brother and says, "Oh, okay, that's it. Right, we're doing it now. We're doing it tonight. Yeah. Like we're killing the bitch." Like, I do wish there was more of a build up to that and that there was more of them working together before it fell apart. But this is super entertaining. And Esther just tries to get away in the car, but of course, like they report the car stolen by the daughter, so a cop pulls her over like immediately and is like, "Yeah, you go home."
I gotta admit, I laughed really hard at this scene, because she's so small, like driving this like car, and then she's like trying, like kind of like acting all badass, putting on sunglasses, lighting a cigarette, all while like she's a maniac is playing on the radio. I thought it was really funny.
Yeah, and then the cop pulls her over, and she realizes it's not that easy to get away. So it's like you have to go back to the house. You're going to be alone with them, and they're going to try and kill her. And so we get this standoff. We get this kind of like this I guess you say cat and mouse kind of game being played throughout the house, where they're going to try and kill her. And she kind of gets away a little bit, and she struggles with the brother, and the brother pushes her down the stairs, and it's like, oh, this is bad, because they were going to make it like a suicide. They were going to like make her look like she'd slit her wrists, and she already had scars there, so it would have probably looked quite convincing to some extent.
That's true, yeah.
You know, so, but all this plays out. But the dad phones, and she has to kind of like talk to him a little bit, and Esther, of course, eventually gets one up on the brother when he comes after her with he's got like his fencing sword, and she like has his crossbow, but she's like, "Yeah, we can't go on like this," and she's like, "I agree, we can't work together," and then shoots him with the crossbow, and then that doesn't kill him, but he puts him down, and she stabs him repeatedly. So now Julia Stiles is pissed because now her son's dead, and she's like, "I'm going to kill you." So we get this like chase scene. Like one of the funny things towards the end of the first movie is when eventually like Vera Farmiga was willing to fight back and just start kicking her. Like here, because Julia Stiles is already this murderous like psychopath, like they are just like punching each other and kicking and clawing and scratching. They're trying to stab each other. As this is happening, the stove turns on, which starts the fire, which is an important detail because in the first movie it said she burned down the previous place. Which I will say the one difference here is that I think the first movie played it as like she always likes to end that way. She likes to burn down the house as an ending. In this movie, it's like, no, that's just happenstance. She didn't care about burning the place down. That's just what happened at the end by accident.
Yeah.
But so yeah, they're chasing each other, they're kicking each other, they end up on the roof, and they're climbing and like trying to throw each other off, and Julia Stiles is picking up the knife and yelling things at her. The dad arrives home during all this chaos. He sees them both hanging off the side of the roof while the house is burning down, and he's like, I'm going to get you. And they're shouting up at him, "Oh, she's not really our daughter. She's this awful person. She's this mutant from Russia or something." And he's like, "Daddy, it's not true." There's like a lot
of like derogatory, like like especially from like Julia Stiles and stuff. She's constantly calling her like a freak and like a monster dwarf and stuff, and it's like, all right, come on, like yes, like she is what do you call it, like dangerous and stuff, but like you don't have to like constantly like make fun of her for like her physical disabilities.
Well, I mean, everyone in this movie is an awful person, except maybe the dad. And the detective seems like an alright dude as well. He's actually doing his job and suspicious that something's not quite right. But so he chooses to grab Esther. So Julia Stiles falls to her death, and like, you see her head hit like the pavement, and there's like blood splat. And it's okay. I did think it was almost a bit too quick that her fake teeth fall out, and he's like, "Wait a minute, you're not my daughter. Who are you?" Like,
yeah, this felt a little rushed. Like again, like it seems like there maybe should have been a little bit more of a conversation or something between them before. It is literally like he smushes her face and like the fake teeth fall out, and then that's enough for him to be like, "You're a monster," and then like she pushes him. I feel like there probably could have been more to that. Yeah.
So the ending does feel a bit rushed, but the house burns down and she's the only survivor, and she goes to the orphanage as a result, and that's it. It's basically the movie. I really can't compliment enough just how much fun it gets once the twist happens, because once that halfway twist happens, the dynamics between the characters, like every conversation she has with the brother or the mother when they're like debating what to do, and she's trying to like one up them, and because the brother's concerned that he's like, oh, so we have to live in the house with this stranger, and she's like, look, she's a fugitive from another country, like she's got as much to lose here as we do, so we can, because he feels like, oh, well, she's got this on our heads, like she can control us now because she can reveal all this stuff. So that dynamic and that play back and forth as they're trying to like one up each other in terms of power plays, before they start actually trying to like kill each other, because it's like, well, clearly they're going to get me if I don't get them first. Like all of that is fun.
And I can't really think of any other like horror movie that has really had a like a some type of like swerve or something like that, where
the innocent family turns out to not be innocent, and it's this more it's an equal footing kind of thing. Like it's not like it's not really similar, but in a way maybe it kind of reminds me a little bit of Psycho 2, where you're not having similar circumstances, but in that one, like you do have Norman Bates, who should be the bad guy, does end up being a little more sympathetic, because it is like these outside forces that are kind of messing with him and like trying to get him to kill, versus like him just doing stuff on his own. So in a sense it kind of reminded me of that, just because it's like, oh, like you're rooting for the killer from the first movie. But I can't really think of like too many other movies that have had something like this that really flips it on its head. I mean, you kind of root for Esther because she's the lead. I don't know if I'd say she's ever sympathetic. She's never like any less evil than she always was. She's still a villainous character. So it's kind of what makes it more of
find love.
It's more of a black comedy in that sense, because there's no one to root for. There's no one to really get behind. But the dynamics are so engaging, because it's just these awful people trying to one up each other and hold up a lie of one kind or another. The lie happens to coexist, but I think it's really smart actually that the first movie's twist is that Esther's not really a girl, and she's actually a fully grown woman who's just looks like a child. I think it's funny that the twist in this movie is not about her, it's about the family around her. That's a really fun subversion. I don't know what you could do in a third one to like shake it up again and do something different, but they thought of something good for this one. I have to give them it. Like it really flipped the entire movie on its head and felt fresh because of it.
I think there's like a couple of times in the movies where they actually refer to her as like a grown-ass woman, which I just thought was funny.
Because technically she's not a grown-ass woman. She's an older ass woman. But she's not grown per se. I never actually looked up if this was like based on like any kind of real condition, or if it's just something the movie made up for, the twist.
That's a good point. I like with the first movie, I feel like that there probably are like conditions that do make you like like shorter, and maybe stuff doesn't like grow as as normal as much wouldn't the average person, but like I feel like you still have like like older features and stuff, like in your face or whatever.
Specifically, the idea that it makes you look a child.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a real thing. It feels made up for the movie, but yeah. So yeah, it's a fun time. I'm surprised by how much fun I had with this one, honestly, because I really
me too.
Like, I was surprised that I had any fun with the first one either. So I am kind of shocked that this is now a 2-for-2 franchise. That's so I don't need any more. I don't need any more. But if they want to give me another Esther adventure where she's if they find a way to again make it fun by changing how she interacts with other people, maybe there's a second character who's like her that teams up with or something. Maybe that'd be interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
Maybe she befriends an adult who actually wants to use her in a scheme of some sort to like con some people or something. I don't know. Like,
oh. Yeah, maybe.
An actual accomplice, I guess, of some kind. That's I don't know. But either way, a surprisingly decent time with this.
What if they did like like she does like her version of like To Catch a Predator or something, like where she like seduces these gross older men and then kills them? It could be something. Is
that our face turn? Is that where she starts to redeem herself by like doing a service to capture?
She's recruited by the FBI. They're like, listen, like we need you to go out there and uncover some of these sick people. She becomes like an undercover agent, or maybe that's what it could be, like a 21 Jump Street kind of thing, where like she becomes a cop, but she has to like infiltrate like an elementary school or something.
Yeah, she walks up and says, "How do you do, fellow kids?"
Yeah.
Actually, minor nitpick this, but I do think the title's kind of nonsensical. Like, Orphan First Kill, like she doesn't do her first kill in this, so the title's a lie.
Yeah, because she starts off in the asylum, so we assume that I forget if they actually specifically say it, or if we just kind of
maybe she crime photos of the blood splatter and stuff. Like she killed a family already.
Yeah. So yeah.
It's a very generic sounding title as well. First Kill.
It's not great.
There could have been a better title. I think. I don't know.
Orphan Begins.
I don't know. What's a past tense version of Orphan? Like
Orph was.
Orphan to be. Or orphaned, just orphaned.
Orphaned, yeah.
I don't know.
I guess like just my thing with everything is just use numbers.
Yeah, like, Orphan 2.
Yeah. Or since it's a prequel, if you want to do Orphan 0, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Whatever. Anyway, Tim, what are you going to rate Orphan First Kill?
I like this quite a bit, really. And even watching it twice within a relatively short span of time, I still had a lot of fun watching it the second time. My biggest complaints really would be just that that dynamic shift is so fun that I really wish we got more time to play with that. And you don't want the movie to go too long and stuff, so I get it, but yeah, it just seems like there's like a little bit more you could do to explore that.
It says a lot that we're both saying that, and it gets half the movie. It's not like it only gets 10 minutes after that twist. True, it gets half the movie, and we're still saying it could have used more time on that side of it.
But yeah, I think I'm gonna go pretty high. I'm gonna give it a 7.5. I had a lot of fun. I think the performances were great. It's it's campy and over the top, but I think it really does that tone very well. And but I legitimately laughed at moments in the movie. The characters got me. It was fun. Rooting for Esther. So yeah, I mean, just some minor quibbles here and there, and again, like you said, the biggest complaint really is just that we wanted more of of that. And I guess another complaint would be maybe some of the stuff feels like a little rushed, like some of the ending stuff. But yeah, no, still a pretty high very good score.
Yeah, I think I'll go straight 7. I think feeling a little uneven in the sense that the first half feels like it's just rehashing things that maybe a bit too much. Well, after the prologue scene anyway. But I think that I may be more interested on a second watch anyway, and I am pleasantly surprised. And I think the way it flips the dynamic, it was very needed, and was a very fun idea. And other than maybe the rushed ending, everything that comes after that twist is very entertaining because of it, because of the change and how it plays out between the characters. So, yeah, 7 out of 10. Good, surprisingly so. So
I'm very shocked because I knew I liked it, but I was like, well, surely out of principle, Pete will not enjoy this movie.
Yes, definitely William Brent Bell's best movie. That's all I can say. So
welcome to the fan club.
So there you go. I will tell you that next time on the show we are going to finish up, at least until the new one comes out next month, but we're finishing up the Hellraiser franchise with its current final entry. But of course there's the new reboot movie coming out next month, so we'll be doing that during the October dawn. So look forward to that. So yeah, I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers. So thank you very much to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Bordenau, Christopher Moy, David Brown, Al Tradesman, and Alison M. Fordyce. They are Patreon producers at the higher producer tier, but of course you can support us on a monthly basis over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as, well, you can go as little as $1, but you get perks starting at $3, including bonus episodes on a monthly basis. At the $5 tier, you get even more streams as a second bonus show every month, where me and Tim just sit down and talk about all the different horror movies we've been watching. And Tim usually makes me play a little quiz that he writes, and that has various, outcomes. You get early access to shows, you get bonuses for other shows that we do on Mail Fuzz Movies and Mail Fuzz TV. So go and have a look, see if you're interested. You can also support us on YouTube by hitting the super thanks button if you want to do it that way. Or of course you can support us for free by liking, subscribing, commenting, dinging the bell for notifications, sharing us out on Twitter, at Screams Midnight on Twitter, or any way you want to share is fine. Sending us fan art. I don't know about that. That sounds a bit dodgy. But there you go. That's the show. That's my plugging done. Hope you enjoy. Thank you. But yeah. So that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time. We're out.